Doing a little more work on this 372. Original edition, not the XP. Excuse me, not the xtorq. This is 372 XP, but not xtorq. Anyway, so I machined the surface here. I'm gonna pull all this plumber's putty out, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna check Squish, check some timing numbers, do a little bit of boarding, and we'll be good to go. Then reassemble this up. So I've got the piston on here. The pin is in. The needle bearing is in there, which I don't need to show you because you've seen me do it. But one thing you have to do before you do these is make darn sure that the cylinder head bolts aren't going to bottom out. Because if they bottom out before you get a seal, kind of like that. So now I have to measure on here what the actual flange height on that's going to be, and what the actual flange thickness here is, and see. This may be too thick from here to here, or easier to show from here to here. This thickness may be too thick, which means that I don't get a good seal. If I don't get a good seal, then obviously that's going to be bad. So, it bottoms out on that one. Let's see if it bottoms out on any of the others. I'll check it, and then I'm going to put this on just temporarily, and we'll check Squish and timing. So just to show again, the ones towards the flywheel don't bottom out. The ones towards the power takeoff here do bottom out. Have to be careful with that. I may actually just use shorter screws, which I do happen to have. So I actually wrote on here, Squish was 0.045. Check and see where it is now. Sometimes the flywheel will rub up against the cylinder head, so you do have to be careful of that, especially after you mess with the height of the cylinder head. Well, we got a bump here. This is 030 solder, so you're not going to see it if it's 045. $21 thousandths. So that's pretty good. Very safe. I'm real happy with the machining. So now let's check the timing. Need a piston stop. That's 43 there. There. That's close enough. 43. Run it back around. 43. Run it back around. 43. It bumps on both spots. Now we can double check it. Move it out a little bit. So there it bumps at 16. Good. Double check that it says top dead center. Looks pretty close. there you have it. Further. Somewhere around there. 103. 103. Which isn't too bad. I do not have to do too much to that. Oh, shucks, I don't have the intake. Well, let's see here. Oh, I can still see it. Good. Intake timing is 74. So now I'm going to move it up to 78. I can push it all the way to 80 if I want to, but this saw is not racing. It's gonna be a work saw. I'm just gonna mark it. Gives me a very inexact measurement, but gives me an idea on the piston how far height-wise I actually need to grind off the intake to get the intake timing I need. So on this saw, I think you can run 100, 120, and 80 for timings. Let's see where we're at on the transfer ports. Somewhere around there. $100, $110, $120, $5, $6, $126 for the blowdown. No. Transfer timing is 126 stock. So 103 to 126. It's a 23-degree blowdown. I'm sure I can mess with that a little bit, but I'm probably not going to. I'm just going to leave it as is because, again, it's a work saw, not a racer. So I'll do a little bit of port work, and then we'll put it together. So let's put the piston down. Things to not forget. Do not forget the circlips on the piston. You have to have the circlips. Have to have the needle bearing inside the wrist pin. Lube up the gasket. Fuel resistant sealer. This is Loctite 515, but there are other types you can use. Blue Loctite on the threads. And remember, I figured out that this side, the bolts can be longer, but that side, the bolts need to be shorter in order so they don't bottom out, so you actually get a good seal. Here's the cylinder. Nice and clean. Did do a little bit of port work. Nothing too exciting. Around the intake. So that's all according to the timing numbers. I did not touch the transfers. Rule of thumb is if you don't know what to do, don't touch the transfers. So I'm not going to touch the transfers. They could be brought down a few degrees, but for what this saw is doing, I really don't think it's going to matter. Let's get some 2-cycle oil on this. touch around the ring. This is ready to be put down. You know, just for giggles, let's put the intake on here too, because sometimes this can be a pain. I'm just putting grease on this because I like these things to be lubed up. Wants to be under there. Let's see. Throttle goes over that way. Looks pretty good. Rubber looks good, no leaks. I'm going to put a little bit of extra 515 on the cylinder, especially in spots where it can tend to leak. Now, if you're adjusting this up and down, you definitely need to check the skirt height. Now, I'm not worried about that here because I didn't do that much, but you do have to be careful about that. Can use a ring compressor, but don't need to. Again, circlips are there. One of those things that you tend to forget, and that's obviously very, very bad. So let's do some general assembly on this 372. Some of this has an order, some of it doesn't. Let's do flywheel. I've got the ultrasonic going for a few other components here, so we'll get to that when possible. Washer. Now, some of these flywheel nuts have washers integral with them, some of them don't. Not want to put this on with an impact. One of the guys on the forum today was saying that when you shear a flywheel key just to line it up and put it on with an impact. No, 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 no. Don't do that. Tighten it down with a torque wrench, not an impact. And the torque is specific. "13 foot-pounds. If anybody has a better spec, I'm all ears. Until somebody corrects me, as far as I know, 13 foot-pounds is the correct spec. Put this down, but we need some screws here. Usually these bolts have flanges on them. So we have a couple of flange bolts. They're going to go here for the ignition coil. A little bit of grease on them. business card. Magnetic side of the flywheel, business card thickness. And these I will put down with a T-handle. One, two. Now we're going to do the air scoop, which is here. Flanged bolt. Make sure it's in the right spot. There's a positioner. So I actually have the tank ready to go and the wire is already on there. So what I might do is just put the tank in. Before I put the tank down, let's put... I don't even know this is going to go. Well, it really looks like I'm not going to be able to get that on there without undoing the intake here. Which really means that this needed to be down before I put the cylinder head down. Yikes. So officially now I'm frustrated. This base plate, as far as I can see, really needs to go down first, and then the cylinder head goes down. Because this rubber piece does not want to go in otherwise. That's frustrating. One other thing to do while I'm in there is grind away a little bit on this plastic because we did lower the cylinder at least a hair. So I'm going to do that. We'll put this down, and then I'm going to actually put the intake back and then reseat the cylinder head down. Frustrating, but that's how I'm going to do it. There is an order to this. This plate needs to go down first, and it needs to be modified. Needs to be modified so that the piston and cylinder can sit down a little bit further. So this needs to be ground out a little bit. There are 4 short flanged bolts that hold this plate down. Just against plastic, light torque on these. One, two, 3, 4. Take and check it with the T-handle. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the cylinder head can go down, but you need to reseal it. Again, just needs to be lightly wet with the sealer. Should be more than enough. While I'm in there, got it open. Blue Loctite on the bolts again. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's too much. And before we're putting this down, we're going to put the clamp on here. clamp really has to be all the way down. It also has to be positioned properly. There we go. Because if you end up with a leak, you're going to have the RPMs. You're going to have the RPMs of the saw kind of all over the place. I mean, loctited, sorry. Now you can also, you can put the exhaust on here too. I just don't happen to have the muffler that I want right now. Once it slips, you're good. Make sure this is all in the correct spot. Make sure the impulse line isn't impinged on. Don't want it all the way down. Tight, not yet. Light torque. Good. Feel it with the T-handle. One, two, three, four. Double check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Impulse line goes through. A little bit of grease helps. Nice. Again, make sure the impulse hose is intact. That always helps. If there's a break here in the impulse line, you get problems with the RPMs. You'll be sucking too much air or not get a good pulse. You'll have issues. Let's put the air guide here in. Yeah, that's going to be good. 1 screw, machine screw, flanged. That's that. Going to provide nice air up into the air intake area. I think we need to put the good old handle on next. Put the handle on. We've got to remember there's a rubber piece in here. The problem with this handle is these don't want to go. They are frustrating, just the way it is. The solution is literally hit it. The spot where that rubber piece is, that is the hump that you have to get this whole thing over. And it went. It just went. That was it. The whole thing did it. The only problem now is, now I gotta go back in there with that rubber piece. Which may or may not actually be doable. know why Husqvarna didn't make this so it just goes up and in, like no problem. But they did not. They somehow overlooked that. I'm not even sure you need that silly rubber piece. Because it is pretty silly. There. Ta-da! I do not know exactly which screw goes here, so please don't quote me on this. It is a machine screw, I know that. I do have new AV mounts in the handle. And we're going to put a chain catcher on here too. Which I think was this thing. Which is old, but that's okay. At this point I don't think it much matters. Nice. Two AV mounts are in. There's a screw here that's kind of a positioning screw. It almost looks like it should have a rubber thing on the end of it, like the 350s, but it does not. I think it's simply there to retain the handle. There we go with the throttle cable. Now these two are going to need to get fed through the right spot. Probably worth pointing those. They got to come through this hole here. Yeah, the paper clip's going to work just fine. At least for the round one here. be good. You got a paper clip. I'm gonna go up through here. They've got to be about 1.5 million different ways to do this. I've got it. There. Good. I think it probably goes to the other side of this. Have to make room for the starter cover here, I think. I don't know. No, probably just goes just right like that, in fact. Hopefully I can put this down now. Fit just fine. Onto the ignition coil here. Wire gets pressed into here. Actually kind of concerned over here that the plastic is a shade too tight. If it's too tight, then it's going to vibrate. If it's going to vibrate, the plastic itself is going to cut a hole. Still too tight. You don't want to have a hole in the wire. The nibble away with it there. That's a little more comfortable looking. Now the wire looks comfortable. Let's run it behind the ignition coil. This is an aftermarket air shroud, so whatever I'm doing here may or may not exactly work. Other than that being a little too tight, looks like it fits fine. This looks good enough that I can put a cover on it. Again, aftermarket cover, not as high quality, but let's have a look. As far as the shape, looks pretty close. Not as well polished, but probably do fine. Nice. That'll be fine. Now I can't put this down yet because I have to put the chain brake handle on first, and there's a bushing that goes in there too, so I can't put that on yet. So let's move over to the chain brake handle while we're in here. They couldn't have made this a whole lot harder. To go up through the gotta grab it, but it will come up through. There's your gas line.